Welcome. This is Leading with Spirit, the show that gives you an in-depth look at topics like what it takes to navigate your spiritual journey, how to heal yourself and grow your spiritual gifts, and balanced practices to expand your business and your spiritual leadership. I'm your host, Spirit Bird, shamanic teacher, healer, and author, here to guide you on your journey to becoming your most potent spiritual leader. In 2016, a freak accident left Melissa with a severe concussion, adrenal fatigue, migraines, and depression. During her 2-year healing process, she realized the power that we possess to heal ourselves and how our thoughts, feelings, and emotions affect our overall health. Melissa founded Ascension Incorporated to share the tools and techniques that worked for her. And I'm so excited to welcome you, Melissa.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. So tell us a little bit about that initial healing process that you went through after your accident.
It really was a freak accident in that I was hit in the head by a young child, which in itself does not sound like anything, but it left me with a concussion that lasted 2 years. And when it first happened, of course, I did what everybody usually does. I went down the path of going to the emergency room and had all the scans that were available to me, and nobody could really figure out what was going on, and took all the medications I was supposed to take, and none of them really worked. And I found myself in this place, which was kind of very dark. I didn't have a solution of how I was going to heal. And it'd been a while. I'd gone from being a very high performing person to basically being in bed all the time. And I don't even remember how it came into my awareness, but I guess that's how the universe works. I started to just learn about energy work and how our thoughts, our emotions can actually impact our body. And I started to, quote, do the work myself. I just went inside. And through that process, I found different blockages. And once I cleared through them, my concussion symptoms have gone. And I have had no symptoms now for about 6 years, which is pretty phenomenal, really. They've gone. And I'm so grateful to that. So that's how I got to here.
Mm-hmm. We don't have to go deep into it, but I'm curious if you are comfortable sharing a couple of the blocks that you found in yourself that you worked through.
Yeah, one of the main ones was being comfortable not being okay. Because I mentioned I'd been high performing. I did push myself pretty hard. I used to run ultra marathons. I've got 2 kids. I was working full time in a very high performance sales role. I pushed myself very hard. And when I was in that place of not being okay, when I had that accident, that was very challenging. And it was really getting to the point of being comfortable with not being okay. And once I realized what that meant and how that actually impacted my body, I accepted it, and those symptoms went away. I mean, it's almost what we would call a miracle when we don't understand it. And I still don't really understand it, but it worked. And so that was the big one for me. That took a while to get there, but once I'd gone through it, I came out a different person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can only imagine how challenging that would have been to have such a big
But
life
fun.
change.
Honestly, my accident now, I see it as a blessing because I would never have got there otherwise. It wasn't even on my radar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So we came across paths when you joined Shaman School. Can you share a little bit more about where you were at when you decided to take that path?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of tied in so nicely. And again, the universe brought it to me. I think I saw a Facebook ad and I did all my research on who you were and what you were offering. And I'd heard a little bit about shamanism, but the bit that interested me was the going inwards, because that's where I was on my path. And as I started to do it and went through Shaman School, I realized that there was so much more to it. I was able to then talk more freely about it and what it meant to me and how it impacted me. So I guess I joined because I was on that path and I wanted to go a little bit deeper. And it was awesome. It really was a powerful, powerful experience for me. I learned tools and techniques that had never come into my awareness before.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Yeah, well, I definitely remember when you started, and then when you were on towards the end of the Shaman School program, you were having some life changes then too. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So as I was doing all this work and kind of going inside, I was still working in a corporate role. And it just got harder and harder to be in that environment where there was so much stress and so much kind of negative energy, and people are just running around in this environment that didn't sit well with me. And I thought, I want to do something different, but I didn't really have the guts to do it. I thought, I would like to do some kind of healing work or bring something that helps people who are in this role. But I had a corporate job and I was being paid well and I had all the benefits that go with that. And then in January, I actually got laid off. And the day it happened, it was such a blessing. As I was being told they were going to have to let me go, I was smiling because I thought, yeah, this is actually what I needed to do what I'm doing. And it took a kick to do it. And thank goodness it did, because I am so much happier. And I wish I'd done it years ago.
Mm-hmm. So tell us more about what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I'm actually combining my pre-concussion background with what I'm doing now. So I was business development for professional service firms for 25 years, working with high pressure lawyers and accountants. And then I had this other life of healing, energy healing and shamanism, going deeper into self. So what I'm doing now is I'm actually combining them, and I'm bringing that holistic healing approach into professional service firms. So I'm working with primarily lawyers, but also accountants and bankers, and helping them work with stress management, helping them develop self. And I'll say there are so many people who not only need it, but are starting to open up to it. I was a little nervous at first, thinking, is it too woo? Is it too out there? But when you have these conversations, people know about it and they're at least open to it. And when they hear my story of how it helped me, then there's a connection there. And so that's what I'm doing now, full time. And like I said, I love it.
Wonderful. So does that look like group trainings or a group support, or is it one-on-one? How have you structured that?
Yeah, it depends on what the firm needs. It usually starts with a group session. And I will go in at the top level. I don't want to go in kind of on the back road, like through HR. I want to go in with the managing partner, the person who sets the culture and sets the tone, because I want this to be something that then trickles down through the organization. So we start with a group. It's not just a check the box. This is something that is really going to make an impact in people's lives. And then depending what they need, it could be one-on-one sessions, or it could be within different teams. Usually takes about 6 months. And I have a whole program and process that I work through with people. And we look at different blocks. And then we'll even look at the business as a whole. And what's the business like as an energy? What are the blocks that the business might have? I do a lot of meditation as part of that. We do different tools. I use some of the journeying that I learned in Shaman School with people one-on-one and sometimes in a group. And it's really powerful and cool what comes up, and then just to have those conversations. And I'll say that the firms who hire me are the ones that realize by giving this to their employees, they are actually helping to retain employees, and they are reducing things like sickness hours, time off, because they are more engaged. There's more of an employee momentum in there, and they want to stick around because they know that the firm cares about them. So in a nutshell, that's what I do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Well, I mentioned this to you that I've met with and worked with a number of people that have kind of been in the similar place where they were in the corporate world. And I guess I have a couple questions, but I'll start with this one, kind of going back to what you were sharing in the beginning. When I notice when people really start or go deeper into their spiritual journey, sometimes it's harder for them to be okay at their place of work and that becomes like the source of frustration. Can you share a little bit about, I guess maybe just like advice or what helped you navigate that space?
Yeah, I definitely went through that. I definitely felt like on the outside looking in, and I'd see stress, I'd see depression, I'd see anxiety, and I'd say, I know how you can fix that. But then I realized that was actually me being very judgmental and that they were exactly where they needed to be. So what I did instead was I went inwards and since this has come into my awareness, how can I deal with the judgments that I have around this? Because it was more around, I would see somebody upset and I'd say, they just need to do a journey on that. And I'd realize that that's not how it works, right? So a lot of it was really helpful for me to do that work on myself, and then I would start to see it change in the external world. But also on a realistic basis, I think staying grounded was really key for me. Not getting caught up in the spiral of anxiety and fear and stress that goes with that. But certainly I was in a sales role. There's a target all the time, every month. Have you hit your number? Have you hit your number? And I would push. And I realized that actually wasn't the way to hit the number either. So staying grounded, and as best I could, just generating and radiating that feeling was key. When I found myself in a situation, maybe in a meeting, I felt myself triggered, I would either try to deal with it at the time by doing lots of breathing exercises, or I would take it back and work on it at home, like what triggered me and why was I triggered. And just by starting to do that, it made that environment a little bit easier to handle.
Mm-hmm. So now that you're on the other side of that, you mentioned this briefly as well, the place of having a little bit of fear around, is this woo and will people want this? What helped you get through that?
Yeah, I still feel it, if I'm honest, sometimes. It's still hard to let everything go that you were. And it's almost like a rebirth, if you like. So I still feel it sometimes, but now I've just realized, to me, it's reality. And it helped me so much that I don't actually care what labels people put on it now. It can be woo. They can call it, it's a shaman, right? It had a negative connotation in the past, but oh my gosh, it turned my life around. So just knowing that, I think, has made me feel more confident speaking about it. And if it doesn't hit them, it doesn't resonate with where they are, that's not my problem now. Mm-hmm. And that has been a lot to accept. And I will admit, sometimes I struggle with it. I'm certainly have a ton more to do. But just being comfortable that this is my truth. And if they're not ready to hear it, that's their journey. And I'm okay with that. And it's a constant process. But yeah, that's the work, right?
Sure, it is. I'd love to hear more about when and how this concept came through for you. When, like, was there a moment you were like, oh, I actually want to do this? Or was it something that kind of happened over time?
Ooh, it might actually have been a session with you.
Oh, yeah.
We did a session as part of the Shaman School. You would do one-on-one coaching with people, which when I signed up, actually, I didn't know I would get. And it was a huge bonus and I loved them. I just obviously didn't read everything. And there was one session we did where I remember telling you I felt like I had a foot in both worlds. And I was at this place of this crossroads of which way do I go? And you did a journey with me that was really powerful and deep. And I did a lot of healing. I think we went into maybe my sacral chakra. I can't even remember the specifics, I guess, because it's done. But I came out of that and I felt like we'd brought them both together. And one of the images I had was bringing it together. And you just talked me through that. And in fact, until you asked me that question, I hadn't realized that was the point. But I think that was the turning point where I realized I could combine them and that I was the same person. and I just needed to remove the blocks around it. So, there you go.
Interesting.
Yeah, you should do that as a testimonial.
I might be clipping this later. Well, I mean, I'm so both intrigued and amazed with how you've brought this together. And I know, like, for me personally, I am always really fascinated with people that have that skill and gift for being in both worlds. I mean, I have a little interest there, but for me, I'm pretty clear that I'm on my little side, that I like to bring people in deep, and, you know, if they resonate, they'll come. But part of it is because I don't know that I've really developed the skill or have that gift to navigate both places. And that's such a beautiful opportunity for, I think, what's happening just in the world in general, and to really bring these two worlds together. So I'm definitely impressed with how you've both seen that possibility and made it a reality for yourself, and helping other people along the way.
Yeah, I mean, I think my background helped, right? For so long, I was in that world. And for anybody who is in that world and kind of wants to combine them, don't view one world as good and one world as bad, right? Which I did. This world is bad, and this is the one I want to be in. But I think being able to see that we're all on this path and we're all on this journey, just at different places on it, and the fact that I have a corporate hat on doesn't make me any different than when I put my shaman hat on. It's the same person. And I think then recognizing that has been the key for me. But certainly having the experience, having the network, being able to have those conversations at that level is the start. I think I would struggle if I hadn't had all that time in professional service firms and having to start from scratch, because you just knowing the language, like what people talk about and the issues that they're facing. I think sometimes we can be so much on one side that we ignore the realities. But these people, they're running big businesses, they're making good money, they're dealing with stresses, the external environment. So I do make a lot of effort to learn, like, what are the trends in the industries, what are people seeing, how's it impacting them? And so I can have that conversation, because they're people too. And then when they're being triggered and where they're seeing how that's affecting them, I talk about how I can help to support that, rather than try to just sell shamanism or whatever it is that I'm selling. It's okay, what's affecting you as a person with what's going on in your life, and how can what I know support that? It's kind of a different approach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love it. That makes sense too. Yeah. So obviously you had a push to do something different professionally. Was that bumpy for you when you decided to start offering your services, or was that something that once you were out, you had a pretty clear pathway and you were all in?
I would say the hardest part was changing perceptions of me, because I had been known as a business development person and I was good at it, toot my own horn, I did well. And I think that people saw me in that light, and they never saw a different side of me, because I never presented that. It was always driving, and let's talk about the numbers. But then in the evenings and weekends, I would become a different person. And so I think the hardest part was just them realizing that this actually is me, and it's actually what I've always been. I just never put that face forward. And maybe as women in business, we also feel that we have to put forward a more of a masculine approach, if you like I never really talked about my kids, and I never really talked about my personal life. It was all, let's focus on the details, because that's what I thought people needed to hear. But then I realized that there's so much more, and I'm a more rounded person by bringing that personal side of me into the business. And my hope as well is that firms will start to realize that, and realize that if they want to keep their people and they want them to be as successful and powerful as possible, that they have to bring in the whole person, which includes all the stuff we bring with us and all the challenges we have going on outside of the office. And the firms that are being successful and retaining people are the ones who recognize that.
That's so exciting.
Yeah, I love it.
So speaking of family, how has this change affected your family? And was that a place that was bumpy or rocky? Where did you find that your family was pretty supportive in what you were wanting to do?
Yeah, I'm lucky. I am married and I have a supportive husband. It might be a different story if I was a single parent. So I definitely appreciate that. I would say my kids are super excited. And I do a lot of techniques with them. They have crystal grids around their beds, and we talk about nature and spirit animals, and we've gone and they've met their dragons. I mean, it's been really sweet and cute, which I probably would never have done otherwise. And I'm still, I'm not talking about it all the time with my family, but I think them seeing me happy and relaxed and actually doing what I really want to do is really powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
So okay, let me just feel here. I'm curious. Mhm. I'm curious if you have any, you hit on it a little bit, but any suggestions or advice for people that have done some of this inner work and they're interested in opening, maybe not a program or something to sell their company, but opening that conversation within their company. If you have any thoughts or suggestions there.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it starts with the connection, right? Who do you know? And in what does that relationship look like? Because there's a spectrum of where you can start. So I would say pick the easy ones, people that you feel comfortable having a conversation with. I usually start to make the conversation as much as I can about them, what's happening, what's going on in their life. And then since I have a story of my accident, I will bring that story in, and it generates so many questions. Like, how did you heal? What's that? What did you do? What shamanism? Isn't that some kind of crazy woo? I mean, I have those conversations, and I think being able to speak from it from a perspective that is calm and confident, and yet also recognizes that there's thoughts around it, and acknowledging those just disseminates them. Um, like I've said to people, I know this sounds crazy because they're thinking she's crazy. So I know this sounds crazy, and then it gets back on that level. So I would think being able to instill a little bit of not humor, but whatever, something in that it makes you personal, but then speaking to it from a place of strength of how it affects you. And not trying to sell. Like I never sell anything. I have a conversation. And if it works, great. And if not, great. Right. I think being neutral about it is really important as well. The other piece I do a lot of, which has been really powerful for me, is looking at referrals. So if I'm having a connection with somebody and it works well, I'll ask them, who do you know? And the way to ask that is really important as well. Most people will say, I'll think about it and get back to you. And then they never get back to you. So I asked them, who do you know? Tell me about that person. Why do you think they would be good? Would you mind making an introduction? So I make it very specific. They get somebody in mind. And then I ask for the introduction rather than, can you think about it and get back to me? And then, of course, they get busy, they forget. So I think little techniques like that of being able to work your network, as it were. One thing I do is I have a spreadsheet of my network, and it's broken into different categories of people that I know who might be able to help me. And I work that spreadsheet, and I'll ask them, who do you know? And it becomes like a mind map. So just little techniques like that. There's a ton of stuff on the internet too that can be powerful. And then knowing what to say, like make it about them. How does it affect them? How does it impact their life? That is really important as well.
Mm-hmm. On the flip side of that, if you are someone who either owns a company or is running a company or in leadership in some way, and they are wanting to bring something in like what you do, but they're running into some of those fears around what would people think, or, would it be accepted? Do you have any thoughts or suggestions for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think focusing on the impact is key. Like, how will this change your life or the life of people that you work with, rather than the what? So if you can focus on why you should bring it in, or the impact it will have, is this going to solve a challenge that we have as a team, as an individual, as a business? And if so, how? And then finding the person who you resonate most with that. Like, what have they done? What's their experience been? How do they interact with you? What are the expectations? What are their goals and milestones? And do they align with yours? I think you have to bring a business hat when you're going into the business. So things like revenue, retention are key for businesses. The people I work with, they're looking at things like utilization of the people. Are they being utilized enough? And are they charging the right rates? And how are they working with their clients? I mean, like, what's important to the business, and how can you, as a practitioner, or however you label yourself, how can you support that? I think is key.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like I love what you've been sharing and your approach, just with some of the conversations around bringing in the inner work, or the spiritual side, or the self-growth, whatever you want to call it. Because I've seen in two places, like big blocks that come up for people are, one, they're all into it and they are running into this spot where when they talk about it, if it's not immediately accepted, they get extremely frustrated. Or running into people that are excited about it, but afraid to talk about it at all. And I love that you've really shared and demonstrated that actually it doesn't need to be that challenging, and kind of you can come in from this really clean place and just share from your own experience without, selling or attachment on convincing somebody of something.
Absolutely. Well, one technique I do before any meeting is I practice it, and I visualize it, and I'll go into a meditative place and I'll just visualize how the conversation might go. I mean, I know it may not go that way, but just practicing what I might say, what kind of objections might come up, what kind of questions might come up, saying it, and I'll say it out loud, because saying it in your head is very different than saying it out loud. And just doing that makes that meeting so much easier, because I've already done it and it's already happened. So that's a little technique that I found has been really helpful for me too.
Mm-hmm. Do you have like a core hope or wish for how you want to see your work affect the world?
Oh, goodness.
I know that's a big one. It can be a couple.
Yeah, right. Just one. I would love for there to be an openness around everything that's different and outside of the norm, outside of what is traditionally expected to be, right? And I feel like this is ingrained in us from prehistoric times, and yet we've moved so far away from just listening to ourselves and our intuition and our emotions and our feelings, and we ignore them. So I guess my goal would be for people to really feel comfortable and confident that they can accept what their body's trying to tell them, and that really is reality. Listen to that intuition and recognize how they get triggered. I mean, especially in the corporate world, there's a lot of stress and sometimes anger around that. So like, what's triggering you, and how can we deal with that so that we can be better citizens, better people, better colleagues? Does that sound naive? I don't know, but that's my goal, of like just people starting to recognize it.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Well, Melissa Griffiths, thank you so much for joining us here today. I'll be sharing your information in the show notes, so if people want to get in touch with you, they will know how to find you. Awesome. Yeah, and I'm so happy to hear that you're doing great and doing this beautiful work in the world.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to speak with you.
Yeah, same. Okay, bye-bye for now.
Bye.
Have you been hearing the call to expand your spiritual gifts? and step into your next level of conscious leadership. If you're a coach, healer, or a spiritual leader, you can learn more about Shaman School and growing your spiritual business on our website, holtonhealingarts.com, or send me a DM at Holton Healing Arts. Welcome to today's Member Query episode, where we explore questions about spiritual paths, intuitive gifts, growing a spiritual business, and shamanism. Do you have a question for us? Send us a DM at Holton Healing Arts. This question is from one of our Leading with Spirit Facebook group members. And the question is, what do I do after I go through an awakening? And the simple answer is to integrate. So after a spiritual awakening, usually what happens for most people, this is a very simple explanation, but usually what happens for most people is they start to see reality in a different way. They often drop underneath the surface level things, and oftentimes their values change too. What's really happening is they're really starting to orient to the heart and the depth of what is here for us as humans in this life. When you go through that awakening, sometimes it can be kind of shocking or stir you up. And it might change the way you are around other people, or it might make it hard to feel like you can connect with people in the same way. Either way, your next step is to integrate. So now that you've had this experience, really, you were in one side of life, maybe a little bit more in the 3D realm. And now you've had experiences that have exposed the truth of what all is life. And so what we actually want to do is start to bridge that connection. And that's what integration is. So this is also how you expand. So instead of saying, well, I was here and now I'm here, and trying to expand or make changes by going further away, we actually want to take the understanding that we have from our awakening and begin to fold it back into our everyday life. This allows us, again, for personal expansion. It allows for our relationships to grow and prosper. And it also gives us the opportunity to be an influence and to help other people who might be stuck in just one realm see that there's more to life. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Leading with Spirit. If you did, please share the link for this episode with your biggest takeaway, tagging me at Holton Healing Arts. It would also support me if you subscribed and left a rating and review of the show so we can support more people living their highest purpose. Until next time, journey on.